Hello, welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to show you how to make aluminum can wind spinners. With Mother's Day coming up, I thought it'd be a good idea to show how I make these. These are just a few examples of some of the ones I've made in the past. Let's get started. You will need 6 empty cans rinsed out. For the wire that's going to be holding the 3 wind spinners together, you're going to need 1/16 wire rod. I'm using 1/16 welding rod. You can find something similar on Amazon by looking up 1/16 steel round rod for crafts. I'll have a link for my Amazon shopping list that you can take a look at for some of the items that you might find useful. For the cutting tools, you'll need an X-Acto knife and a pair of scissors. I got these pair of scissors at the dollar store in the kitchen section. Coming up next, you're going to need a pair of long nose pliers. With the cutters, you're going to be cutting the wire rod, which is pretty sturdy, so you're going to want a good pair of cutters. For the next tool, you're going to need a pair of round nose pliers for making a loop in your wire. For the next 2 items, you'll need a hammer and an awl. If you don't have an awl, you can use the tip of a nail. For the fun part, you're going to need beads for decorating in between the wind spinners. I use pony beads. You can use any beads you'd like as long as they fit on the wire. Let's talk about swivels. I was using this size 5 barrel swivel to hang my wind spinner up, but it didn't last that long. So I went to Dr. Fish, and you can tell the difference is this one's quite a bit larger, and this one has held up well. So I will put a link to this one in my Amazon shopping list down below. I made this hook out of the wire that I used to make the wind spinner. You can either purchase a hook or make your own. You will need some more wire if you choose to make your own. I use a small swivel for the tail. I make a little flower that I hang off the bottom, and this is what I use the small swivel for. I'm going to leave the bottom decoration up to you guys for your own creativity. You can make anything you want. Over here we have the hex nut. I put about 3 or 4 of these at the bottom of the wind spinner to give it a little bit of weight. For these next supplies, you're going to need a ruler, a piece of paper, a marking stick. In this case, I'm using a colored pencil, a Sharpie, and a couple pieces of tape. At this point, let's go ahead and mark our marking stick at 3 inches. Now, I already have this one marked at 3 inches. This is for what I call a medium spinner, and this is the one we're going to be doing today. This is the part where we're going to take some measurements on our piece of paper. We are also going to need one of the cans that we are using to make our wind spinner. So what you're going to do is you're going to get your piece of paper and you're going to wrap it around your can. You're going to want to kind of keep it tight, and you're going to want them to overlap. Kind of even it up so the paper matches on both sides. And I can see through the paper where they overlap, and so I'm going to make a mark where it overlaps. Put one in the middle. There we go. All right. Set the can to the side for now. Grab your scissors and cut the end piece off. So now you're going to take your ruler and measure out the length of your piece of paper. Mine is at 8 3/16. So now from here, you're going to want to divide that up into equal sections, equal strips throughout your piece of paper. I already did this part, so I know that I need to make each strip 5/8. So now I'm going to make a mark at 5/8 going all the way down my paper. And now that I have them all marked on the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and mark them on the top. Oops. Oops. Now that you got that part done, just line your ruler up on your lines, on your two lines, and make your mark all the way down. The measurements I just did on my piece of paper is 8 inches and 3/16 long. Then I divided each strip into 5/8. These measurements also work on a lot of other cans. You can use them on a lot of your pop cans, some of the beer cans, Venom, Rockstar, and I'm using Monster. Now that we have our measurements done on our piece of paper, go ahead and take a couple pieces of tape and have them ready to go sitting on the side. Grab your can and your paper and wrap it around like this. And tape it up. All right, now that we got it taped, we can take it off. And we're able to put it back on. And this is what we want. So what I like to do is I like to find a line already on the can, and I'll line my line up with that line. So you're going to be marking on the top and the bottom, all the way around. Make sure that your paper doesn't slide so your lines stay even. And then just keep marking top to bottom all the way around. Just enough so you can see your guidelines. Okay, now that I've made my marks all the way around, take your piece of paper off, and you're going to want to keep this because you're going to be doing more than one can. And you can see the lines going around my can. So that's what it should look like. Something I wanted to add is when I show you how I mark my lines, that I line up my line on my piece of paper with a line on the can. I do that for all my cans, so I'll pick the same, there it is, I'll pick the same line on the cans to start my marks with. This matters because the cuts will be the same on the can, and you can kind of match the pattern on both cans when you're putting the spinner together. At this point, you are going to want to have all of your 6 cans marked out with your guide marks. Grab 2 of your cans that you want to go together to make one of your wind spinners, and grab your X-Acto knife, and we'll get started on the next part. First, before cutting our can, you're going to want to know what end you want to cut off. And how you will know that is by what style you want to make your can. By that, I'll show you what I mean. This is an example that I made using 2 tops of the can. If you want to make the design like this, with the 2 tops, you will need to cut off the bottom of both of your cans. So you'll need to cut off the bottom of both of your cans to keep the top portion to make the two pieces go together. For the next example, I made a wind spinner using the top and the bottom. To do this, you will want to cut the top off one wind spinner so that all you have left is the bottom portion. And the other one, you'll want to cut the bottom portion off so that all you'll have left is the top portion to make the wind spinner. So one side will have the top and one side will have the bottom. And then when you put them together, this is what you get. You get the top and the bottom. And also, if you wanted to use two bottoms for your wind spinner, you would need to cut off the top of both of your cans to keep the bottom portion. My husband made this fancy little device for me that I can set my cans in, and I can cut so I don't have to hold and cut the can at the same time. You can kind of get creative and put something on each side of your can so that it basically just holds it there, so it makes it easier for cutting. So I'm going to cut the top off this can. So where it starts to curve and come down, this is like a really hard spot to start cutting with your X-Acto knife. So I come down, right here is kind of like a really tough spot where it bends down. So I come down just a little bit from that and I poke, and then I just kind of go slow and I try to stay even. I try not to come way too far down here because we're going to need some of this length for our wind spinner. So I try to keep it up high because I'm going to be cutting off the top to use the bottom portion. My X-Acto knife might be a little dull, but that's okay. Just take your time and just keep cutting. Sometimes when it gets to this point, it gets a little hard to cut with your X-Acto knife because it's loose. So I set my X-Acto knife down and I get my scissors, and sometimes for this last part, I just give it a little snip. Okay, now we have the bottom portion of our can that we're gonna use. So now I'm gonna cut out the bottom portion of the can so I can keep the top part of the can to make a top and a bottom for my spinner. All right, let's start cutting. And the same thing, it gets a little tough really close to the edge here, so it's easier just to come up a little bit and start cutting. It's okay if your edges look kind of ugly because we're going to be cutting that off. Bend it out. Give it a little snip. Okay, so now we have a top and a bottom. After I cut the bottom and the top off the two pink cans, I continued to cut the remaining four of my cans. I did it the same way as I did the pink cans, is I cut a top off one of my cans and I cut a bottom off one of the cans. And I also did that with the other one. I cut the bottom off one and I cut the top off the other one. Now you should have your choice of the tops or the bottoms cut off all 6 of your cans. The other two pink cans are still here, so I will have 6 in total. I started them on the next part of the video, so we'll be seeing those next. So before we end part 1 of this video and get to part 2, you might want to have a pair of gloves because we'll be getting into some sharp parts of the can. And the fingernail polish remover and the cotton rounds, or you can use cotton balls, is for removing the permanent marker that we made when marking our guidelines on our can. So that'll end part 1 of the video, and I hope to see you guys for part 2. Bye!